Has teamed up with the Royal Foundation and the United for Wildlife to combat illegal wildlife trading. Wildlife trafficking is estimated to be worth $7 to $23 billion annually. Africa accounts for up to 70% of the total illegal trade, which has had an adverse effect on tourism and human life. And right now, I'm joined by the head of sustainability at Investec, Tanya dos Santos, who joins us in studio. Good evening and welcome to The Full View. Tell us about this meeting that took place on Tuesday.
Good evening, Aldrin. Thank you for having me. The meeting that took place on Tuesday was really the first time that the South African financial sector got together with the Royal Foundation and United for Wildlife, which is really an organization that is spearheaded by His Royal Highness Prince William, to combine forces to really fight illegal wildlife trafficking. Mm-hmm.
And considering that this is the first time, have there been attempts before to try and get the financial sector involved, considering that of course money would be going through the financial banks?
So illegal wildlife crime is actually one of the highest, most profitable crimes globally, and yet we haven't seen the focus on it that we've probably needed. Mm-hmm. Have we seen collaboration across stakeholders like government and NGOs coming together? Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. But this is probably the first time we had this level of engagement with the financial sector.
Mm-hmm. And how many companies are on board?
So at the moment, there are about 30 companies across the world, so 30 financial companies on the financial task force. So there's a transport task force and a financial task force. Okay,
we understand that Rob Campbell is joining us via Skype. Rob, good evening and welcome to The Full View. Speaking about the meeting that took place on Tuesday and the importance of that meeting as well, and just having the Royal Foundation being part of this particular initiative, what does this mean for the Royal Foundation?
Thanks for having me. I think it's really important. Specifically for us, we're trying to set up an increased capability for countering the illegal wildlife trade. And South Africa, or the region down here, is a really important area. There's already a lot of activity going on in this region, specifically, say, here with the black mambas. And we'd like to sort of latch on to some of that intelligence that's gathered and pass it across to the financial services industry. Mm-hmm.
I'm sitting with Tanya dos Santos here in studio from Investec, and one of the questions that I just asked her now was that whether there have ever been any attempt, at least from conservationists like yourself, for instance, to try and get the financial sector on board, because it goes without saying that the money would be flowing through these financial institutions.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if you look at wildlife trafficking, like any other form of trafficking, there's a financial crime involved, and therefore this should be prioritized as much as narcotics trafficking, arms trafficking, or human trafficking. But I think bringing the banks are keen to get involved, and banks like Investec, ABSA, Standard Bank already have processes in place to look at this. But there are other banks in the region that need those lessons learned that ABSA and Investec have, and they want to share some of the best practice amongst other banks. So we're looking at a sort of standardized industry response to wildlife trafficking. And from the meeting on Tuesday, there was a really positive response, both from law enforcement, seeing that the banks are really keen to do more about this, but also from the banks to see that if they file suspicious activity reports or if they take action, then it's going to be taken forward by law enforcement. So a really positive meeting, and I think there's quite a bit more to do, but we're in a really good place.
And Tanya, how are you able to detect these suspicious activities?
Well, all the banks already have infrastructure and architecture in place to pick up things like anti-money laundering. So we're really using that same architecture to now pick up suspicious trading that would relate to wildlife crime. So the architecture is already in place, but now we can actually take it a step further and start looking at how do we follow the money.
Yeah. Does this mean that the Financial Intelligence Center is also involved in this?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the head of the Financial Intelligence Center, Peter Alberts, was at the session, together with the head of law enforcement from the the Department of Environmental Affairs. They all have a role to play.
And let's speak about intelligence from the law enforcement side, at least, and speak, for instance, about the police. Do you think that enough is being done on that front?
Well, Aldrin, to be honest, when you're still losing 3 to 4 rhino a day, no, I don't think we can possibly say enough is being done. However, we are seeing positive progress, particularly in the South African region. You're seeing a bit more pressure on our neighbouring countries as a result. So definitely we're seeing progress. We're seeing progress in terms of arrests from law enforcement. Where I feel that we're lacking is on the sentencing. It's not severe.
Why do you say that?
It's not severe enough. So often
so it's not a deterrent?
It's not a deterrent at the moment, no. And most of the time, the people who are captured are released. They get out on bail, they disappear. So seeing that whole law enforcement process through to the end needs to happen more often. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it needs to happen more often.
Rob, I think something quite important to this as well, and Tanya, I'll get your take on this as well, is that what seems to be absent and what people don't understand, and even community members, is that when you have this illegal trading that's happening of wildlife, it also has an impact on the economy of the country, and also has the impact on communities that live among these animals and also benefit from having these animals.
Yeah, that's right. And bringing the communities into these say problems is absolutely critical. As I've said here, the black mambas do a great job of engaging with the community, but also, people like Care for Wild with their rhino sanctuary and the community development work about bringing communities into the sort of lands, into the landscape, and involving them in solving the problem. But on the sort of successes, this is a fairly new model, as Tanya said, in South Africa. But it's something we've done in other regions that are sort of hotspots of wildlife trafficking. I mean, look for East Africa. Mid 2019, we worked with the US Fish and Wildlife Service, but a number of task force members were integral really to bringing down the largest ivory and heroin trafficking network in East Africa. The two leaders of the syndicate, often regarded as untouchables, were extradited to the United States. So there are real successes that can happen here, and I think the meeting on Tuesday really set the framework for that sort of success to happen in the future here.
But why is it that we aren't able to track down exactly where these animals end up and get those who actually are the end users, or should we say purchasers, get them also behind bars?
Well, I think that's it. I think there's a quite complicated question. I think there's a few answers there. One is that by engaging with the on the ground intelligence, witnessing the sort of problems firsthand here, and then taking the profiles, building sort of criminal typologies and red flags that can be shared with banks, who can add that to their automated systems and to try and detect suspicious activity. And that hasn't happened before in wildlife trafficking. It does happen with other forms of financial crime, but this is the first time that wildlife trafficking is taking a real step forward in this respect, engaging the financial services sector, also engaging the transport sector. Traditionally private industries that haven't looked at wildlife trafficking. And I think having them on board is really going to add to the value, and we should start seeing some pretty substantial results.
Okay, Rob Campbell, thank you so much for your time. Rob Campbell there from the Royal Foundation. And just quickly, Tanya, your take on the economic impact of these illegal trading.
Well, I think if you realize that 60%, we've lost 60% of our wildlife in the past 50 years. That is going to have a dramatic impact on our economic environment, our financial environment, but most importantly, as you mentioned, on our communities. These are our natural resources. This is the value that we live off. This is the land and its wildlife. And tourism is such a key part of our economy and key growth of our economy that if we lose our wildlife, we're going to have a massive impact on not only our economy but on humanity as well.
And just quickly, how do you get communities involved?
our Investec Rhino Lifeline has a number of projects. We work with kids in the communities. Kids have the best impact to go back and influence their parents. We do a number of things where we work with education of trainers, online projects, and as you heard, the main aim is to raise awareness across all our communities.
Tanya, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
There you have it there from Tanya dos Santos, who's from Investec, the head of sustainability there at Investec. Tsepiso, over to you.